Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this, the 11th of our bulletin follow-ups. I'm going to share my screen in the usual way, and despite much practice, I don't find this at all straightforward. Here we are, and this is simply to remind us that it is the December 2025, the last issue of the year, last year, that we're going to be looking at. And here is the front cover, and indeed much of the issue is dominated by comments and an obituary of our late patron, Sir Mark Lennox Boyd. And here you see him sitting on the steps leading to his famous stairwell sundial, La Meridiana. Much more about that as we go along. If you want to look at previous these follow-ups, you can search for British Sundial Society YouTube, and you will find our channel and all the previous 10, and quite soon this one, the 11th, will be on there. If you want to do it more quickly, you can key in youtube.com/the-BSS. As usual, there at the bottom is my email address should you wish to make comments, grumbles, complaints, all the rest of it. Just a word about the conference in April. As last year, we're going to have it from Tuesday to Thursday. The venue is Bedford, county town of Bedfordshire. And here is a photograph, not quite like the photograph you had in the bulletin, bundled in with your December bulletin, which was very much the same view, same bridge, but taken from the other side of a river. This photograph was taken pretty much from the dining room of the hotel in which the conference is going to be held. And on the other side of a river, you can see one of the main churches in Bedford. And off the picture to the right is Bedford School, which probably has the best sundial in the whole of Bedford. So I'm hoping we're going to be able to have a look at that. Much more about this on the British Sundial Society website. Please do take a look. Here, as usual, is the outline of our table of contents for this issue, and the lead article by Doug Bateman is indeed the obituary of Sir Mark Lennox Boyd. Now, I highlight that as the dominant article in the bulletin, the lead article. And at the very end, Mike Shaw is going to give us the postscript on the same subject. So we've got Doug, the opening bracket of this issue, and Mike being the closing bracket. Well, that's all from me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and back to the bulletin itself. Here is Martin's puts up front cover, and if you'd like to turn over the page to have a look at the inside. And this is the not very interesting thing. It does tell you that the front cover and indeed the back cover are both photographs of works by Mark Lennox Boyd. And over the next page, we have the obituary itself. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. It's absolutely splendid obituary. Probably the best obituary we've ever had in the issues of a bulletin. Certainly one of the best obituaries I can remember. And there are lots of photographs on the right, page 3, of parts of the Meridiana, and at the top you can see the building itself. In fact, if you look at the top photograph, we're going to be visiting there, and you can see the main part of the house in the foreground, and then a sort of square tower at the back, and that has 2 apertures in the walls, actually 3, and we'll hear about that later on. Now, Doug is with us. Doug, are you going to say anything extra about this?
Yes, the obituary, there was a contribution from others, although you give me a lot of credit, which is very nice. But this picture there was retrieved by Christine from the AHS, and it was a pleasure to include the comments by the notes from Ben, who probably knew Sir Mark better than the rest of it because of doing the work for him. The other aspect is that where we were drafting this and the final thing, Lady Arabella was absolutely delighted with the obituary, which was nice, and also said that all being well, we would get an invitation to a memorial service, but we haven't heard anything. The other thing I'd like to add is that I do have this wonderful book by Sir Mark, and I've got in it, if I can get the accurate, an autographed dedication. I don't know if we can see that in the top there, and also he very kindly gave a comment about my the noon dial on glass, which whoops, oh, I've just touched the mouse and it's messed things up.
Very unwise.
My noon dial on glass, and he says very kind words about that, the uniqueness of it, which has since been destroyed. The other comment is about the book, is that I do have a spare copy. If anybody is interested, they can let me know.
Yes, they're available on the internet too, but they're expensive.
Pardon?
They're very expensive on the internet, so having a copy from you would be better. I have one too. He gave me a copy because he gave a copy to everybody who had a sundial mentioned in it. And
Yes.
just by chance, he mentioned one of my sundials. So I'll be lucky to have that copy.
Yeah.
And I have a self-imposed task of getting the signatures in that book of everybody who's got a sundial in the book as well.
I think I've signed your book too.
How?
Yes. Okay. Well, can we go over the page?
I'm having a bit of trouble with Sir Christopher Wren, but most of the others are okay.
Yeah, so we can forge his signature. Well, we'll be saying more about this at the end. So if you think you wished you'd asked a question on the obituary, then at the end when Mike comes in, we will have another chance to ask questions then. On the next page, we have the report of the follow-up relating to the September bulletin. There's not much to say on the first page. I do draw attention on the second page, which you see now on the left-hand side. If you can go in nice and close, Martins, this photograph was in the September issue, but unfortunately it was printed the wrong way round. And here you see it the right way round. And Martins is pointing, keep doing that, Martins. Martins is pointing at the last line of the Arabic, and that last line is Arabic numerals, which is a date. And you can see at the bottom on the printed, that same date printed out, and it quite clearly says 1316. And if you translate that from the Arabic numerals into English numerals or Latin numerals, and because it was printed the wrong way round, I just did not spot it. And so that was a bug in last time's issue. So December issue, here it is printed the right way round with various comments. It is actually quite an interesting sundial. There's still one or two questions to ask about it, but please do reread this because it amplifies what was said in the September issue. It says something more about Jenkins's dials too, but do go on to the next page where we have Sue Manson's article. Yes, here it is. Is Sue with us?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Hello.
Phew, I didn't spot you in the list of participants, so this is all very good news. I'm feeling better. Do tell us what you have to add about this.
Not a lot, to be honest, because I think I put most of what I gleaned about the sundial into the article. But the thing I will mention is the rather strange gnomon on this style. It looks, can we see a picture of the gnomon, please, Martins? It looks way too big for this small dial, which is about 8 inches across. And it has that strange vertical edge on it, which makes it look like it was made for a double horizontal dial, which clearly that isn't that dial. The other odd thing on it is a little hole at the top of the gnomon, which we wondered if it was a hole for dropping a plumb line, perhaps. but there's no target on the dial face for the plumb line to look for. So we came to the conclusion that perhaps it was just a blowhole in the casting. But we've debated whether that gnomon is actually original to the dial or not, whether it came from somewhere else, but it's rather inconclusive for the time being. That's about all I've got to say on that, unless anyone's got any questions.
We did mention at rehearsal that there was a question as to whether this was the original gnomon and the where it's mounted, but we all agreed that it was original, and this is the original mounting, and it is very strange, but that's how it is.
Possibly, yeah.
Yep. All right, Martins, next page. And now, is Andrew with us?
Yes.
Super. Right, over to you, Andrew. You can amplify what you have so beautifully produced on these 2 pages.
Lovely, thank you. I'll just put into the chat the URL of this web app that I've made. So if anyone wants to visit it, they can click on that link, which might be easier than typing in the whole URL. So if I just share my screen. This is all about analemmas, really. So we all know what the analemma looks like because we've seen a million pictures like this. And we often see that it's leaning over. I'm assuming you can see it because somebody raised their hand.
Yes, it's all working.
So normally we expect the analemma at noon to be vertical, more like this sort of picture or this sort of picture, but often it's leaning over. So I was quite puzzled by this. And I moved into a new house and wanted to know where the sun would be, partly to help my wife plan the garden, but also just to general interest. So I wrote this little program, and what it does is it puts on a projection, which is a sort of projection that Frank doesn't like. But basically, it's not really like a geographical projection. Around the outside, we have the azimuth, as you'd expect. I've made it south up by default because I expect to put this sort of picture on a south-facing windowsill in order to be able to look out and expect to see the sun in the right direction. And the radial axis basically is in 10-degree increments, shows what the elevation of the sun should be at a given time. So it's a little bit hard when it's full. I mean, what I like about this is what drew me to sundials in the first place, which is a kind of a meeting of maths and science and aesthetics. So some people are interested in the aesthetics, some people are interested in science, and sundials kind of brings them all together. It's a bit easier to see what's going on if I don't draw an analemma every 15 minutes, but every hour. If we see an analemma every hour, this starts to look more like what you see on those web search images. At noon, it's pretty much straight up. And you can see what I've done here is draw the months in different colors. So they follow the colors of the rainbow. The summer solstice is in June, so that's out here, generally around the 21st. Then July, red, August, orange, September, August, September. So the equinox is here in towards the end of September. October, November, December, you have another solstice. And then up we come again, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo. So to find out where the sun will be at any given block hour, so this is the mean time, in fact, Greenwich Mean Time, with UT offset 0 hours. You can see that, as you'd expect, in the yellow phase where we're at the equinoxes, you can see it's around 6 o'clock that we break the horizon. So this black circle here represents the horizon. Here the sun is below the horizon and it's night time. You can see that dawn hits around 6 o'clock, and to follow the sun's path on any given date, you look at the same place in the same color as you go around. So in the spring equinox, we're basically on our way down. Sorry, spring equinox, we're on our way up, coming up to here towards June. So you can see there's 6 o'clock, we're just breaking the horizon, 7 o'clock, we're here, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. It stays at GMT, so don't switch to British summertime because that would make it very complicated to label everything. So what's quite interesting about this, apart from it being sort of very pretty and colourful thing that you can make into a table mat or a coaster and put on your windowsill, is that you can investigate what things look like at different places on the planet. So here we are. This is a picture drawn for the North Pole. And anyone who's clicked on that link will see that you can set the parameters for what you want the diagram to show. Here I've taken it just slightly south of the North Pole so that the concept of north means something. I've told it how far off south up should be. So I've got north up now with 180 there. And I'm asking for one shown every 15 minutes, which tends to be very busy and clunky. But if you're trying to understand what you're looking at, it helps. And you can put anything you like here so you can print it and you get a nice picture to impress your friends. So at the North Pole, at the summer solstice, which is this end here, the sun just goes round and round and round up at the expected elevation, and then at the equinox it circles round pretty much at the equator, and then for the whole of the winter period it's below, and we all know that because they're exactly at the North Pole you get 6 months of no sun, and after the spring equinox you get 6 months of sunshine. It goes round and round and round. So if we look at the next spot I've picked, which is on the Arctic Circle. So here, the Arctic Circle, you can see that, again, this is north up version. So the sun is in the south, and at the summer solstice, it goes round and round and round, and it just kisses the horizon at midnight. So basically, you've pretty much still got 24 hours of sunshine, and equally at the winter solstice, you get 24 hours of dark, but the rest of the time you get a decent amount of sunshine. You can see that if we go a little bit further south to somewhere a little bit topical, Nuuk in Greenland, you can see there a little bit south, there are 64 degrees. And here you can see that at the summer solstice, you get dawn at 2 a.m. and then you get loads of sunshine all the way around, and then sun sets just after 10 p.m. Other than that, you're starting to see the thing being a lot less symmetrical, a lot less circular than it used to be. Coming down a bit further, London. This is again pretty much similar to the Cambridge view. Again, I made this just hourly so you can see more clearly what's going on. And you can see that here, the analemma is starting to lean over quite a bit, but we still get dawn pretty much due east all the time, but we get quite a difference in when dawn is. So dawn is quite, for London, dawn is quite almost northeast at the summer solstice and 4 o'clock. And sun sets a little bit after 8 p.m. and it's again quite far to the north, which surprises people how far north of west the sun sets. Whereas in the winter, it sets quite a bit south of west. And you can see that here we're getting much fewer hours of sunshine, well, sun up. We don't get much sunshine, but we get plenty of sun is up. From here, we get about 8 o'clock in the morning and it sets about 4 p.m., which we're all familiar with living in the UK. I'm impressed to see so many foreign people here from abroad where your mileage may vary. If we carry on further south, Corfu, they're getting more equatorial. They're still well outside the tropics. And these analemmas are starting to lean over much, much more. As we move even further south to 30, like in Cairo, what the analemma leaning over means is that the times of sunrise and sunset don't really change with the hour. So the more equatorial you get, the closer to 6 a.m. the sunset, the sunrise and 6 a.m. sunrise, 6 p.m. sunset. We keep going south. Here we are on the Cancer. Now things start to get really weird because at the summer solstice, the sun passes directly overhead, as you'd expect. It still rises in the east. So the summer solstice is, as we look in our little month chart, is 21st of June usually. So that's in the middle of the purple. So it's around here. But because, so you'd half expect it to be here, but because the analemma means that in September the sun is 7 minutes fast, that 7 minutes makes a huge difference to the azimuth of the sun. Because if you imagine something passing directly overhead, one minute it's due east pretty much, the next minute it's due west pretty much. So it's only due south or due a little bit north or due a little bit south for an instant as it hammers overhead. And that's what you see by these dots. So each of these dots represents a different day, and blue is May, and this is June. So it's only due south really on the at noon on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th between around the 6th of June is due south. By the time you're up at the solstice on the 20th, being 7 minutes sun fast, the noon is a long way east. So the noon analemma is a long way east on the summer solstice on the Tropic of Cancer. Interesting fact. Well, I found it interesting. Bizarre fact. Now we start moving into the tropics themselves and we start to see some really weird behavior because at some parts of the analemma, sometimes in the year, the sun is due north, sometimes it's due south. And that's because once you're inside the tropics, in the northern hemisphere summer solstice, it's north of the equator, so it's north of you. And consequently in the winter it's south. So the sun actually passes overhead to the north of you some of the time and to the south of you the other time. So it must make making sundials really tricky. And I haven't really got to grips with that. And I might do some more study on people making sundials in the tropics. Here we are actually on the equator, and I've picked a town, Quito in Ecuador. And again, this is it's now much more symmetrical, but the analemma itself is not symmetrical. So if we move 10 degrees south of the equator, we don't see it looking just like a reflected version of 10 degrees north of the equator. And that's because the analemma is not itself symmetrical. It's got a much bigger loop at the bottom at the
winter.
Yeah. In our winter. And you get these pretty spirals and things. So trying to interpret this is quite a mind bender because you might think the sun would follow these dots, but the sun doesn't follow the dots. Each of these dots is a different day. So that's where the sun is on that date in the month of October at clock noon or clock, whatever time that is. Finally, we go. So I'm running out of time. So just last picture is when you're south of the equator, things look slightly different because obviously the sun spends most of its time north of you. And what that means is the sun casting a shadow will cast a shadow to the south, and that means that if you look where the still rises in the east, of course, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. But that means that the shadow goes the wrong way, which means sundials look very, very different from the southern hemisphere. And that's about it. So yeah, nothing more to say unless there's any questions. So feel free to play with it. Other things, it will accept various parameters in the URL, so you can put in your, you can preset the latitude and longitude. You can also play with different colors. So you can make the, you can actually drive quite wild aesthetic, if you like. So that's, these are RGB, hex RGB. So that's all red and that's all blue. So color 1, color 2 is inside and outside. Well, there you go, and then you can print them as little coasters and put them on your windowsill. That's the end.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That's absolutely splendid presentation. I really enjoy watching this kind of thing. I think you have to be a bit of a nerd to enjoy it as much as I do, but I certainly enjoy it. I certainly do.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can just mention that actually reading the diagram for equator is quite a tricky thing because initially I wanted to understand in which direction, let's say, the sun is traveling, but actually you have to understand if it's 90 degrees, then actually the whole circle becomes 1 point in zenith.
Yes, exactly.
So it's like three-dimensional
But when you're actually
transformation.
up on the equator, it's really quite straightforward. It rises roughly east, goes straight up overhead, and rises roughly west, and sets roughly west.
Only on the equinox. That's true on the equinox.
But
It's quite true, but
four directions close into 1 point.
that's
Actually.
right. Yes.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
Yes.
Which is why it changes so quickly at noon. Which is why these
Indeed
dots are so far apart on the. So this is the noon analemma, and you can see every day you've got a quite different location of the sun at clock noon.
Okay. We have photographs of exhibits at meeting, and now the next one we have the Newbury one-day meeting itself, which Martin's attended. Delighted to see him there, and another rainbow at the bottom of the left-hand page. Oh yes, the top of this page. This was Martin's. You can probably tell us about this. Martin's asked AI to please.
My presentation was about trying to understand what artificial intelligence tools could provide us in relation to the sundials, and they were quite keen to generate formulas and to generate a list of angles for each hour. But as soon as I was requesting some photographic a representation of the calculated sundials, or just for sundials, for example, of an alematic sundial in Newbury, then there were incredible results coming out, and it shows that AI tools have still a way to go for sundialing.
Yes, you wouldn't sell that for a very high price. No. Okay, on to the next thing. Next page. Yes, this is. I don't think Martin Jenkins is with us. Is he?
No, I'm afraid he's not.
There's lots of nice, pretty pictures of cards. Some of these, and there are plenty of sundials to look at. What I think of as a mark-space ratio is rather small. You have to look at quite a lot before you see one which you really like, but they're fun. And it's definitely worth having a look at them more carefully than you might initially. But otherwise, I don't think there's much to say. It's a self-explanatory article. So if you go on to the next one, we have this. It's a really interesting story of several thefts of sundials in the Georgian period. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's one of these things where there are lots of writing, but not many pictures. So not really very much to say. And then Doug has a little note about the visit to the Liberation Monument in Guernsey, which is quite an impressive sundial, very well worth a visit if you find yourself in Guernsey. I think otherwise not that much to say about it. And next, I think that's the end. And on the back cover, we have another of Mark's sundials. So over to Mike. Where you're going to tell us more about Mike's, about Mark Lennox Boyd's sundials, in particular his Italian sundial and his Italian safari.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Good. This is a trip that the Sundial Society made to Italy back in 2004. So it's a long time ago, and many of the people you will see, sadly, are no longer with us. But anyway, so let's crack on. We went to Rome. We were told we were going to stay in this wonderful hotel, so I was expecting to look out of the window and perhaps have a view of, the Vatican, maybe the Colosseum. But actually, I got this. Very impressive. Anyway, never mind. Sunday, our first day, we went out to Pincio Park and the Villa Borghese. The family Borghese do themselves proud. Quite a nice villa, I thought. And the many statues. And I've stolen the poem by one Spike Milligan. It is the pigeons that are light on statues' heads that make them white. And also, I didn't realise that all those years ago they had mobile phones. There's a picture of somebody there just checking his messages on his mobile. Anyway, inside, wonderful statues, pictures, all sorts of wonderful things. And then outside, somebody said, "Hey up, is that a sundial in the distance?" So we went down to have a look. And there it is. Now, only Frank can work out what time it is. Do you want to say anything, Frank, or not?
Well, it shows Italian hours and common hours. It doesn't show Babylonian hours, which you might think. And if you are looking at a sundial like this and wondering what's going on, it's always a good idea to look at the equinoctial line, because you know two things which are quite certain about the equinoctial line. One is that when it meets the horizon line, it is 6 o'clock in the morning by common hours, and it is 12 hours after sunset. So the common hours and Italian hours are exactly 6 hours apart, and you can follow it down and you can work out where midday is, and that of course is 18 hours Italian hours at the equinox. One of the things about Italian hours is that you have to work out what it is at noon, and it's a different time at noon each day because it's a different number of hours since the previous sunset. So you can study this one later on, but it is a perfectly satisfactorily marked out Italian hours plus common hours sundial.
Anyway, we enjoyed ourselves at the gardens. We stopped at the little zoological gardens there. We stopped and had a few people here is Tony Moss, you may remember, Margaret Stanier, sadly no longer with us, Jeff Parsons. This is Ian Watton and his wife, and that was Tony's brother, and I can't remember this guy's name, I'm afraid. It's a long time ago. I'm beginning to lose the marbles. Then we found an address to die for. How would you fancy living in 3 Sundials Road? And there they are. Now, I should explain that this guy here who's taking notes was Frank Evans. And poor Frank got the short straw. He was asked right at the start if he would make notes and write the whole trip up at the end. So you'll just see him never looking at anything, just writing notes all the time. I think he got what's called the poisoned chalice. Next, on a coach and a trip round Rome, the Victor Emmanuel Monument, the Italians call it the wedding cake, right in the centre. And we also found Mussolini's balcony. But for those of you in the know, I have to say, we didn't find his lamppost. There are wonderful things everywhere you look. In the distance, Trajan's column. It's got the whole history of him carved in a spiral all the way up, all the way from the bottom to the top. Remarkable bit of carving and making and so on. Then we went to see where Charlton Heston drove his chariot around. And of course, there's the Colosseum. It looks a bit odd because that's 3 photos stitched together. It was much bigger than I anticipated it to be for some reason. And of course, we had a few centurions walking about having a cigarette. Crowds of people, crowds everywhere. And then we came across Constantine's Arch. Now, this commemorated a battle he won in AD 312. And a lot happened within the next 3 years, because by 315, he'd moved the administrative centre of the Roman Empire down into Turkey, in a town he named after himself, Constantinople. He'd embraced Christianity and he'd presided over the Council of Nicaea. Now, one of the things they did at the Council of Nicaea was to work out the rules for when Easter would be. The first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. And then when Pope Gregory in 1581 decided to get rid of the 10 days they'd accumulated, I'm afraid the Roman Catholic Church got very uptight about when, or trying to find out when the exact date of the spring equinox was. And that is why practically every cathedral in Italy has got a meridian line, and we'll see a few as we go along. I was quite tickled to see SPQR on every grid. And then on the next day, off to see a mirror ceiling dial in the Palazzo Spada. Yeah, sadly, the sun wasn't shining, so no spot of light. But the little mirror on the window ledge here. Yeah. And of course, everybody got a crick in their neck trying to take photographs of it. And then out, and we had to pass through the flower market. And up here, I noticed some very rude-looking, interestingly shaped root vegetables. Anybody remember the Esther Ransom show will remember that she used to love seeing a rudely shaped vegetable. And then we found a shop with 2 large sausages in it. My good friend Jim Marginson there. And then off to the home of Sir Mark and Arabella Lennox Boyd, about 85 kilometres north of Rome. For reasons unknown, the coach parked us at the bottom and we had to walk up towards the building that you can see at the top. And here we are. It was still really under construction and you don't see it in its best light. And this is the staircase, the square structure that had the sundials in it. The house's layout is like this. This part is the living area, and in here goes a staircase, and there are 3 things. There's an east aperture here, and the sun shines through here and runs on a sundial. It runs up this wall and about halfway through the next wall. Then we have the west one, which runs from the middle of the back wall down to here. And this one, again, is a mirror which reflects a spot of light onto the ceiling. There's the archway entrance where we go in. And Frank's there taking notes again, and a lot of people. It wasn't finished at the time, and there were no banisters. It was quite scary. You could have fallen down from the top to the bottom. There's an armillary sphere hanging from the ceiling. And here is the ceiling dial, and we just happened to be there at almost noon. Here's the spot of light on the just on the 12 o'clock line. Frank and I had a good look at it the other day. We've clearly got the hour lines, we've got azimuths, we've got elevations, we've got date lines, we've got zodiacs. There's a lot on it. I don't know if you want to say anything, Frank. By all means, chip in if you do.
What you're saying is right. Anybody looking at this, studying it later, can easily work out what's going on. Yeah. You should though point out that this is actually the ceiling. So we're looking at a horizontal surface.
Yes.
Almost everybody looking at this will have it in a vertical plane at the moment. You should hold this one above your head to give you the idea of what it looks like.
Yeah. Yes, here's the east aperture. You can see down here, this is the hole where the sun shines through. And the motto, from the rising of the sun to the going down of the same, may the Lord's name be praised, which is a psalm, but I can't remember which one. By now, of course, the spot of light's moved on a little bit. And this is the actual diagram. So it says up here, the dials tell time, dates, zodiac in red lines, azimuth in blue lines, altitude in blue, azimuth in green, and the times of sunrise and sunset. And it tells you a little bit all about it here. This was Sir Mark's original layout idea. This is the upper, look, the entrance from the upper hall. That's me taking a photograph into a mirror just so you can get it all in. And this is the modern one. I took this off their webpage, and they've actually, this is the upstairs entrance, and there is actually banisters now, something to hold on to, which about time. Here's Mark and Lady Arabella. Lady Arabella, as you may or may not know, is a garden designer. In fact, she designed the garden of my neighbour just down the road, the Duke of Westminster. And the whole artistry of it, all the clouds and whatnot in the background, were painted by her daughter from her first marriage, Dominique. And I can't tell you her surname. It's very long and complex. There's Tony Moss sitting festooned with cameras and video cameras and whatnot, looking very pleased. And so, having had a look round, so to lunch, and we went out on the veranda. Help yourself to any part of the pig's head you wish, we said. And then huge amounts of pizza. Yeah, pizza for all. The whole thing has come on a lot now, and this is this is an aerial shot of the house as it is today. They've now added another house down here and a swimming pool with bedrooms in here and bedrooms in there. I had a look. You can rent it by the week, and depending upon the time of work, you can rent that from anything from £3,500 to £9,000 a week. So get in quick. There's bound to be a great demand. Then we went on to visit Arabella's, Lady Arabella's home where she was born, where she lived. There's the family seat. Frank lost his notebook. Here we all are, waiting to go in. And inside, a very old building, and these things on the wall are all frescoes, all painted about, I think she said it was about 100 years previously. And they have all the family records out. Thousands and thousands of records. Must have gone on for years and years. Nice painting, family crests and so on. Then we walked back down to the village and past a rather interesting concept in graveyards, I thought. Apparently this is quite common in Italy. They're all like, you get a little slot, like a filing cabinet, and you have to rent it. And if you don't pay the rent, they clear it out and put somebody else in. Tuesday, back into Rome, have another look round. We went to the obelisk of Augustus and its meridian line down here. How the Romans all those years ago got one of those things down in Egypt, put it on a boat, and then got it off a boat and put it up, it just beats me. So there's the meridian line again. It's outside the Parliament building, so we have the police keeping their eye on us as well. And then on to Santa Maria of the Angels and Martyrs. Now this was formerly the baths of Emperor Diocletian. Now Emperor Diocletian became emperor in 284. So it's been there a long time. And when they wanted to put in a meridian line, they chose this building because if it'd been there for 1400 years and not moved, probably it's not going to move anymore. It doesn't look very impressive on the outside. But inside, it was converted into a basilica 1,400 years later by Michelangelo. And wonderful it is. Some wonderful stuff. You walk in, you see the outside, you walk in the door, and everybody just goes, wow. And here's the meridian line. The meridian line of Santa Maria of the Angels and Martyrs, constructed by Francesco Bianchini and inaugurated by Pope Clement XI in 1702. It served to regulate all the clocks in Rome until 1846. Thereafter, noon was marked by the firing of a cannon. But what they don't tell us is how they knew when to fire the cannon. Yes, it's quite a long one. This is the aperture up here. It's 20.35 meters above the ground, and to find out the origin, they had to drop a plumb line, and they couldn't, so they had to cut a groove all the way down the pillar so that they could drop a plumb line into the bottom. The bit on the left, Frank knows all about this. This is all about following the movement of the pole star over centuries.
Yeah, it enables you to tell the year as well as the time.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's the groove down the pillar leading to the meridian line. This is the point that marked directly underneath the aperture, and then the meridian line went off this way, and this bit of the pillar was in the way, so they had to cut it round here and put a little finger thing in so they could pull it out of the way and push it back when they got the line right. There is a diagram how it works. We don't need that, do we? We know what we're at. And here's a photograph of a transit on the line taken by Mario Arnaldi during a partial eclipse back in 1999. Not everybody was as fascinated as the party that were in there. Next, off to the Vatican. Here's me and Jeff. Another obelisk. And so on. Vatican, quite impressive, very impressive, I have to say. So St. Peter's Square is called a square, even though it isn't a square. It's a perfect ellipse. Round here, there are 4 pillars. There is 2, and then a gap wide enough to take a coach and horses, and then another 2. And the 2 foci of the ellipse are marked. And if you stand on it and look back, all the pillars line up. You can only see the front pillar. Interesting. And the obelisk also has another meridian line coming along this way. Inside the Vatican, wonderful statues by all sorts of people, including Michelangelo. I happened to be reading the Da Vinci Code when I was in Rome while this was all going on. Quite interesting. Wonderful stuff inside, wonderful pillars, the dome from underneath. Even the manhole covers are quite impressive, I found. So, end of day 3, lots to talk about. Haven't I seen Leonard Honey's is on this here? Here he is. Jim Marges and myself, Jack Bromley. Yeah, we know these people. Yeah. And then on Wednesday, off to Florence and Ravenna. In Florence, we visited Santa Maria Novella. The front of the building faces exactly due south, and there are 2 lots of sundials marked there on the front. The first one, this one here, they were installed in 1574 by Ignazio Danti. And the idea was he was using all these to try and find the true dates of the spring equinox. And he did it for over years and years and years, apparently. And over a number of years, he managed to measure the length of the year to within 3 minutes of the accepted value today, which is pretty impressive, I think. This bit should have something on the top. If you look in the archives, it had a big thing on the top like this, so you can try and determine when the equinox was. And he also put up 2 bicycle wheels. One's facing due north-south, and so when the shadow of the front falls on the back, it's noon, and the angle of this one will be the co-latitude. So again, at noon on the equinox, the shadow of the top will fall on the bottom. Wonderful stuff in Florence, the Duomo, the baptistry, wonderful carvings, wonderful stuff. Inside the dome, there is a meridian line in there, but I haven't got a photograph of it, I'm afraid. All sorts of things. And we noticed all these statues here, and this one here is actually a picture of an astronomer and a 24-hour clock there. Here's the dome, the baptistry. The baptistry was where somebody used it to work out the rules of how to do perspective in drawings. I remember a program on television quite a long time ago. Not the true copy. They don't have the true statue of David out on display in all weathers. Anyway, a lot of people dress up all sorts of funny things, from the sublime to the ridiculous. Onto the Ponte Vecchio, where there is a sundial. Yes, on there. And right by the Ponte Vecchio, just a few hundred yards away, is a wonderful science museum. It's got many of Galileo's own scientific instruments there. We spent quite a lot of time in there. And it's even got Galileo's middle finger in a glass case. So if you're famous, don't die in Italy. They chop you up and put you on display. Thursday on to Ravenna. This was the hotel we stayed at. And we went in the Natural Museum, San Vitale changed, wonderful stuff, wonderful mosaics, wonderful frescoes, and some remarkable Roman mosaics, an awful lot of them. A lot of Celtic knotwork in them as well, which I got in. I did calligraphy for a while, and I got into Celtic knotwork. It's a lot harder than you think. And in the Piazza del Popolo, a vertical meridian line running down here. Yeah. And there's also quite handily a McDonald's, so Tony popped in for a drink. And an analematic noon dial in Ravenna, but set to the time in Rome, which is what everybody's looking at. We went into not Dante, but Dante's tomb, and everybody who came out, as they came out, said, gosh, it's like an inferno in there, of course. And then the Clasenza Library, they took out books to show us, a remarkable place again. And we looked at the Fountain of the Hours, a dial by Mario Arnaldi. I never quite worked out how it worked. There's slots in the back, and the sun shines through those at certain times, and it appears again on the front. And a nice photograph of us all. Outside the planetarium, another Mario Arnaldi one, which got quite a lot of things on, which are, he's got altitude and attitude here. He's got the dates for Easter until 2071, a sundial, of course, and a plaque showing the equation time. It's all done in tiles. Looked very smart, I thought. Friday on to Bologna. In the square outside, they've got these very rude statues, and there's a place marked for you to stand right by, so it makes Neptune look very rude. And this is the cathedral in the background. We went to see a statue of Luigi Galvani, complete with his frog's legs. And we also went into the anatomy theatre. Now, anatomy, you weren't allowed to cut up people in those days. So apparently what they used to do was get a sheep or something like that and strap it underneath. And then they'd be dissecting the body on the top. And if anybody happened to come in who shouldn't do, the whole thing would rotate. And the body of the person they were dissecting would fall through the floor into a canal which ran underneath. So it looked as though they were just dissecting a sheep. Frank making more notes. Now, the cathedral is not facing due north. This is taken from Google Earth. So they had to be very careful. The aperture is about here. And if you put down a layout, you can see that to get a due north, you've got to go very close to certain of the pillars inside. And here we are in the pillars. This is what it looks like inside. And here's the aperture right at the top. And here's the meridian line. And you can see just how close it goes to. It is the longest in the world, apparently. Here's the aperture. And it's 68 meters long. And they dug a trough in the floor and filled it with water to make sure it was level, disregarding the curvature of the Earth. And again, another photograph of a transit of the meridian line taken during a partial eclipse in 1999. We all stood on the steps. This one is Mario, the one who's done it all. Very, very helpful chap when we were there. We also went in another room, another iron by Dante, but it's so short. It came. Oh, sorry, came across the floor, and then up the doorpost. So it was too short. And now a public dial by Giovanni Paltinieri. It's up high like this because it's surrounded by buildings and they have to raise it to get it through. And it's got a groove up the middle. And the idea is if you go at night and you put your eye here, you should be able to see the pole star. And it does have a meridian line as well. Another group photo. This is the guy who did it, Giovanni. And Frank making a note of everybody's name for the bulletin. Saturday, off on a coach trip. Pomposa Abbey, saw an ancient dial. On to Este to see the oldest, what is reputed to be the oldest shepherd's dial in the world, this one. And I took a photograph of that because I'd never seen a pomegranate growing in a tree before. There you go. And then on to the home of Petrarch. He was the Italian equivalent to Geoffrey Chaucer, I suppose. So we saw his home, we saw his chair, and we even saw his stuffed cat or his mummified cat in a glass case on the wall. And another dial by the same Giovanni. And there's Jack Bromley trying to see if he can see the pole star in midday. Frank making his final notes, another meridian line. And that's what it looks like from up above. And so our last evening, and in the last evening we were there for we always do some entertainment. Frank finally finished at last. He said, I'll just go to Roses. And I think I did Roald Dahl's Jack and the Beanstalk for to have the last word. So there we are. That was our trip to Italy back in 2004. The end. Thank you, folks.
That was splendid, Mike. Thank you very much indeed. Well, now anybody can ask any questions about your talk or about Doug's obituary. Anybody got any comments? No comments.
Clearly not.
No, somebody will come up with one, I'm pretty sure.
I went this summer, I went to Italy with my wife and another couple, and I thought it'd be really clever to follow in the footsteps of that article because we've been with Anton, who've been categorizing and reading all old archive bulletins, and I thought it's quite interesting set of sundials that you go and see. So I picked one for each day we were there. The first day we went to the St. Peter's to look at the meridian line there. Couldn't get anywhere near it because it was full of chairs and all roped off because they were going to have a service. So that was failure number one. Then the second day we went to that Palazzo Spada with the reflective ceiling sundial, which, as you may know, I'm interested in reflective sundials. Couldn't get in because the sundial is in a private law court part of the building, not the building you can actually, part of the building you can get to, which has an art gallery in it. Failure number two. Third day, we went to Santa Maria degli Angeli to see the wonderful noon line. Just as we got there at 10 to noon, there was a bunch of nuns came out, closing all the doors because they were having a private service for some religious outfit. So I failed 3 days. And then I said, shall we go and see La Meridiana, which is this wonderful place that we've had explained to us today. And all my friends said, no, thank you, Andrew. You failed 3 times. That's it. So don't try and recreate that without a lot of preparation. So what I hadn't appreciated is the amount of prep that goes into these sundial safaris, getting permission and making sure there's access, because it's not just rock up. There we go. That's my comment.
Yeah, it's a very good comment. You're absolutely right. Things in Italy can be closed even when they're supposed to be open. Well, thank you everybody for attending. There is World Sundial Day coming up on the 20th of March. You'll probably hear about that by one means or another. I shall be giving a talk on that about a new sundial made by Annika Peterson, designed by me in a car park of a school 20 miles southwest of Stockholm, and it indicates Old Norse time measurements. So brush up your Old Norse and your Swedish, and you'll understand the talk. With that, I say, well, goodbye to everybody, and thank you for attending.
Goodbye.